Hello, Jan fam. What's up? We are talking about Janet Jackson, the documentary that aired on Lifetime and A&E. I've got my Janet Jackson hoodie on. I am so ready to sit down and just freaking talk about this documentary. It aired on Friday night, January 28th, part 1, January 29th, part 2. In this video, we're talking about the premiere night, part 1. This is gonna be a 2-part video. Y'all, this documentary was so good. And if you are a lifelong Janet fan, you are going to appreciate this documentary because it's her story, shared by her, shared in her voice, her experiences. We see footage that has never been released before. So let's just jump right into this. So this documentary, it started in 2017. Janet, she invited a documentary film crew to come along with her during her 8th concert tour, Unbreakable, which, anyone else go and see that tour? Because I did. I saw it in DC. I loved it so much. She has a kid. She is going on tour. She is doing the damn thing. It was great. So this documentary film crew then continued to follow her for the next 5 years up until present day. So let's start with this documentary. It opens up with Janet visiting the town she grew up in Gary, Indiana. She visited her childhood house that she grew up in, where it all began. She visited the home with her brother, Randy. And the producer asks Janet, why do you want to do this documentary? And Janet then says, it's just something that needs to be done. She says so many people have tried to tell her story, wrote unauthorized biographies, and this was really her chance to share her story the way she wanted it to be shared, which, you know, if you know Janet, Janet's a very private person. She doesn't open up to anybody. Her life is very private. She doesn't share details like this. And the fact that she went into some of these details that we're going to talk about in this review, it's just, there were moments in that documentary and things that she shared that left me jaw dropped, mouth open, oh my God, I had no idea. So this was her chance to share her story in her own words. So while they were driving through Gary, Janet saw this huge mural of her brothers, the Jackson 5, which, caused her to get very emotional. And the one thing that we learned or already knew is that Janet loves her family and would do anything for them. And in part 2 of the documentary, when I review that part, we're going to talk about, her relationship with Michael. So anyway, I digress. Part 1 of this documentary, we go deep into her childhood, and it focuses heavily on her brothers and the Jackson 5 and the early stages of Janet Jackson. So this premiere night, it's all about her childhood and the progression of Janet Jackson. So Janet Jackson grew up in a small town, Gary, Indiana, with 8 siblings, 6 brothers, 2 sisters, her mom, her dad. She lived in a small house. I believe she said 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, bathroom, 700 square feet. So very tiny. And they said that they never considered themselves poor, but they were one plate away from being in poverty, which, mind-blowing. So she said that her mother worked at Sears and her father, Joe, worked in a steel mill. Joe Jackson, though, he is the reason why we have the Jackson 5, we had Michael Jackson, and we have Janet Jackson. I'm just saying, he was the patriarch of that family, and he was willing to put fatherhood aside to get his family out of Gary, Indiana, and to make something out of themselves. So Joe Jackson, we learned a lot about him, and I have a lot of thoughts, and we'll get to those in a second. So the scene with Randy and Janet sitting in their childhood house, sharing stories while growing up, it showed a very different side of Janet and the Jackson family. A side that I don't think a lot of us really got to see into. And it was nice to hear these stories of Janet growing up with the Jackson 5, with her brothers, with her sisters. It was nice to see that told in her words, in the way that she wanted it to be told. Like, I feel like this whole documentary was very authentic to Janet Jackson. Now, I just want to say one thing. Joe Jackson walked so Kris Jenner could run. Really though, if you really think about it, Joe Jackson is the trailblazer for parent managers. He paved that way for many of these, Dina Lohans, Kris Jenners, momagers. He was a father-ger, Candace, husband-ger from Potomac. Like, Joe Jackson made the Jackson family. Where's the lie? No lie detected. So this documentary, it showed, like I said, the progression of the Jackson 5, the progression of Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, starting basically from nothing and becoming worldwide superstars. Joe Jackson was very tough with the kids, and Janet Jackson explained that he said what he wanted and they would do it, and they fell in line. He taught them discipline. He taught them hard work. He taught them to never give up. He didn't want his kids to be running the streets, doing drugs, getting caught up in the wrong crowd. He harnessed talent and potential he saw in them and pushed them into show business. Now, whether or not you want to, chastise Joe Jackson for, making his kids do something that they didn't really want to do, he also made something out of his family. I'm just saying, like, you can't, hold that against him for wanting something better for his family. He had a bigger vision for the family. He wanted them to get out of Gary, Indiana. He wanted to make something for his kids. Was he tough? Yes. Was he mean? Yes. But he did it with a purpose. That family literally came from nothing and became worldwide superstars. So then we move into 1971. The Jackson family, they moved to LA. And Janet shared a story about David Bowie. And this is one of the times that my mouth was like, what? So when they moved to LA, the Jackson family would host these large, over-the-top parties for Motown, and all the celebrities would come. Diana Ross, Bing Crosby, Marvin Gaye. So Janet said that David Bowie was in a room with Michael, Janet, and Randy, and he offered them drugs. Now, Janet didn't say what kind of drugs. It could have been marijuana, it could have been cocaine. I don't know, but Janet said that David Bowie offered them drugs, which, crazy. So, during this LA segment of the documentary, they interviewed the neighbor of the Jackson family, and this neighbor shared that the Jacksons were the first black family to move into the neighborhood of Encino, and she said it was controversial. Because you have to remember, at that time, there was still that divide, the racial-driven issues in the country. Everybody was segregated. We were coming off of that. Like, there was a lot of emotions about blacks within this country. And Janet then shared that the people didn't want them in the neighborhood. And they had a petition going around to get the Jackson family to move out of the neighborhood because they didn't like that black people lived there because it was a predominantly white community. Janet said that she would be walking down the street and people would shout the N-word at her. She even was told to go back to her country. And then Janet shared this story about going to school, and school kids and teachers would be touching her hair. They would rub her skin, asking if the black comes off. What? I guess it was a little hard to swallow hearing that. But then I had to keep reminding myself those were the times that we were living in during that time in the country. So there was this scene where Janet was talking to the producers, talking about how her brothers would always be out touring and Janet would be left behind, and it made her feel like an outcast, and she said she didn't really know where she fit in. There was then this scene where the Jacksons were on a talk show and the host asks if Joe Jackson spanks the kids as a form of discipline. Joe casually brushes it off and says that if they misbehave or do something wrong, that he makes them take out the garbage. But we all know that Joe did give the kids spankings. He heavily did discipline them. So we'll get to that in a second. So in 1974, Janet got to finally be part of the Jackson group and was included in one of their acts in Las Vegas. They finally introduced her into the group, and Janet shared that she never really remembered being asked if she wanted to be in the act. She just was kind of put into it. So Janet, we all know, is very shy. She was a shy little girl, but when she got on that stage, damn, she lit it up. She really is a true performer, and she thrives on the stage. So it was that night in 1974 when Janet was introduced into the act and changed the game. This was really the start of the global icon we know and love today. This is really when it was that seed was planted. Are we still following along? Because there was so much that happened in this part of the documentary. This first part, it was so good. It really was. The way things were explained, loved it. Moving on. So Janet then shared that none of them had a normal childhood. Not her, not Michael, not any of the siblings. No one had a normal childhood. So while the other kids went to gymnastics, Girl Scouts, brownies, Janet said she wanted to do those things, but she couldn't because she always had to go out and work and perform. And Janet so badly wanted to have a childhood. She so badly wanted to get an education, but was always told no, that she was going to perform. So going back to this Vegas thing, we need to put it in perspective. So in 1974, the Jacksons were the only kids performing in Vegas at the time. And remember, it was the 70s. So Vegas was all about drugs and drinking and gambling and strippers, and it wasn't family oriented. And this group of kids were in Vegas performing 2 shows a night. So then Janet talks about the good times and her auditioning for the role of Penny. Her character was an abused kid. She was hit, beat, burned. And this proved that Janet also had acting chops because that role was so tough to play. And Janet really made that role her own and really portrayed someone different on TV and really was a role model for little black girls at that time. Even now, people watch The Good Times and see Janet, and these little girls are like, that's me. Janet is more inspirational than any of us really know. And when we get into part 2 of the documentary, I have thoughts, honey. Seriously. So going back to the discipline thing, Janet then opens up about how her parents disciplined the kids. And she said, yes, you do discipline your child, but you then turn around and give them love. She said discipline without love is tyranny, and her father wasn't a tyrant. Which, if you're just going out beating kids, then that's a problem. And, I think we have very strong feelings about what is discipline, what is not a good form of discipline. But, that is what Joe did. And, He heavily disciplined his kids, and that's that on that. So then Janet shares a story of how she went into her family's recording room one afternoon after school and laid down a track, and that she forgot to delete the recording. Her father, Randy, and Michael found it and listened to the recording, and her father told Janet she's going to be a singer. And Janet didn't want to do that. She wanted to go to college. She wanted to study business law, and her father basically told her, no, that's not going to happen. You're going to sing. So that started Janet's singing career. Not long after that, she met with A&M and signed a recording contract. What we found out during that time, though, is that the Jacksons fired their father, Joe. So basically, in a sense, because Joe wasn't working with the Jackson 5 anymore, because they were like, nope, bye, Janet was his new project. Joe put all of his energy into Janet Jackson. Joe said that Janet is going to be a huge star, even bigger than Michael. Joe was in control of everything. Every single thing Janet did, Joe signed off on it and made all of the shots. So Janet said she wrote none of her songs. She had no say in anything that she sang. She basically went into the recording studio, sang the songs they wanted her to sing, and left. And she then said she didn't even want her last name on the album. On her first album, she did not want her last name on it. She didn't want to be associated with the last name Jackson because she didn't want people to judge her based on that last name. So we all know her first single was called Dream Street, and there was a scene they showed Janet performing Dream Street on the Dick Clark show. I'm sorry, I don't know what the show was actually called. And Dick Clark said to her, and this kind of was a little cringy, not gonna lie, did you know when you were a little girl, you would grow up to be as pretty as you are? And it just was like, damn, how sexist. Like, you wouldn't ask a man that. And it just really continued to show me how sexualized we made Janet Jackson. How we scrutinized her looks. We would look at her and be like, wow, look at how pretty you are. Did you think you're going to grow up to be so pretty? And then when she, became more sexual, we're all like, oh, no, you're too sexual. And then the nipple with Super Bowl, it's just a weird double flippant standard that we have with women in entertainment. And it has to freaking stop. It's like one end of the coin, we're saying, oh, wow, look at how pretty you are. Did you ever think you'd grow up to be so pretty? And then on the other end, it's like, oh, no, you're too sexy. Rein it back in. Why would you show a nipple? Why are you having your boobs out on the cover of Rolling Stone? Why are you in music videos half naked? Like, it's a double standard, and it's gotta stop. I just found that whole scene a little hard to swallow. So, moving on, we know her first album, it wasn't successful. It didn't sell millions of copies, and it was essentially a flop, and Janet was a little disappointed in it. And this really was the pivotal moment that Janet wanted to break free from her father. She wanted to be able to stand on her two own feet. She said the only way that she could break free is by getting married. I mean, I guess I should have known, but I didn't. I didn't know that her first marriage was to El DeBarge, James DeBarge. No idea. I guess I'm not a true Janet fan. I'm kidding, I am. So they first met at Soul Train. They started dating when Janet was 16 years old. They got married in secret in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So Janet shared this story that after they got married, they went to a hotel. James looked at Janet and said he'd be right back. And he left for 4 hours. He left Janet Jackson sitting in a hotel by herself when she was 18, just waiting. Janet said, and this what she said, I was like, oh God, because she just has so many issues with men, and I think she wants to see the best in people, and she chooses the wrong guys. She said, maybe it's this person in me that wants to help. Subconsciously, when it comes to relationships, somehow I'm attracted to people that use drugs. So we then moved on and talked about Janet's role in the show Fame. So Janet was in Fame. Her father wanted her to be part of the show, and Janet did not want to be part of it. And the only reason she auditioned and got on the show is because she did it for her father. Janet said that many times she would even show up late to work because of her relationship with then husband James. She said she would wait 2 hours for him to pick her up from set. She said she found out he was doing drugs. She would search for him in the streets at like 3 or 4 a.m. She would find pills, try to flush them down the toilet. He would try to wrestle them out of her hands. And she said she tried so hard to see the good in him, and he needed help, and she wasn't the help that he needed. And 1 year later, they got an annulment because they were only married for a year. And Janet said that, she told him as they were going to like his father's house or something. And he got so mad and angry, and it scared Janet. And when he got out of the car, she just locked the doors and drove to her parents' house. And she said he took advantage of her kindness. He lied to her and he abused her. And it's just sad that Janet continues over and over and over again to find herself in these situations with these guys. So the way this documentary is broken up, it is split up into 2 nights. The first night was part 1, and the second night was part 2. And essentially what they did, they took 4 one-hour episodes and paired it back to back. So night 1 was 2 episodes. So we're going to go into the second episode, the second half of the premiere night. So let's jump into it. After 2 unsuccessful albums and a failed marriage, now we have allegations about the secret baby. So let's talk about it. Just want to backtrack for 1 second. Janet said that the only way she could get out on her own and do her own thing is by getting married. So this rumor is still being talked about today. And when I released my trailer reaction video, people commented saying, well, let's talk about the secret baby. Where's the baby at? Why would she give her baby away? 3 decades, people. 3 decades. This rumor has been going around that Janet had a secret daughter with her first husband, James DeBarge. So they eloped in 1984. Janet was only 18. The marriage only lasted 1 year. So the allegation is that Janet gave birth secretly to a daughter named Renee, and that she was raised by Janet's sister, Rebe. They also said that Janet's niece, Brandy, her brother Randy's daughter, was Janet's daughter because of how similar they looked. So all throughout this interview, they also interviewed people very close to Janet, and one of them was Debbie Allen, Janet's co-star in Fame. And Debbie said, "What baby? Where's the baby? We were with Janet all day, every day, and we never saw a baby." So when Janet was doing Fame, the kids thought she was pregnant because she gained weight, when actually Janet was on birth control. And at the time, birth control then made you gain weight, and that is what happened to Janet. And here's the thing. I think it's incredibly hurtful to continue this narrative. Janet said that she could never keep a child away from their father. I just want to know this. Who started this freaking rumor, and why do all of you believe this? Seriously, like, Janet went through so much at this time, all right? She was trying to figure out who she was, come into her own. She wanted to get out of the control of her father. She married James DeBarge because she thought that was her out, to have her own life, to have her own voice. So she got married. Little did she know that James DeBarge was addicted to pills and drugs. Like, that is traumatic. She's only 18. She went through all of this stuff at 18. And now all of these allegations and these stories are out saying, oh, you had a secret baby. I just think it's so incredibly hurtful to paint that narrative and continue this narrative. It's not right at all. And shame on any of you for continuing this. Like, she didn't have a baby, all right? There's no baby. There's no secret baby, all right? So put it the heck to bed. But, you know, that's what the media likes to do. They like to paint these celebrities in such a horrific, negative way. Like, if you look back on history, like, that happened to Janet. Everything that happened to Britney and how they painted her in the media, this awful mother who is reckless and this and that and mental breakdown, and put her in jail, put her in a psych ward, she's unwell. Instead of, like, getting her the help that she needs, it's just a very dangerous path. And luckily, Janet made it out the other end unscathed, and a decent, kind human being who is trying to make the world a better place. So everybody that believes this, just shut up. It's stupid and it needs to end, and that is really all I have to say about this whole secret baby. It's dumb, all right? And Janet pretty much shut it down. Shut it down. Moving on. And it kind of ties into this. Janet then said that the media always tried to paint her brother Michael into a freak, which they did. And I don't think Michael is a freak. I don't think Michael did any of the things that he did. I think none of the family members got to have a childhood. I think the older Michael got, the more he's like, I just want to be a child. I never got to have a freaking childhood. And who gives a shit if he likes Disney? Who gives a shit if he likes, you know, Tinkerbell or Peter Pan? Who gives a shit? You know? Seriously. I like Disney. Makes me feel happy. So shut the fuck up. Janet said that her and her brother were very, very close and would do everything together. But she also then went on to say that there was also a shift. After Thriller came out, they both drifted apart and kind of like went their separate ways. And it hurt Janet. She said that, you know, anytime an album would come out, they would sit in the car together and he would make her listen to it from front to back. And that he would come in her room and they would talk for hours. And that just stopped happening. Janet then said that when you have the last name Jackson, there's a certain microscope they want to use with that, which is true. So there was this interview they played when a reporter asked Janet what the disadvantages are about having the Jackson last name. So Janet said that the disadvantage is choosing a friend because you don't know if they're wanting to be your friend because of your last name and that you're Michael Jackson's sister and the fame, or if it's because they truly like you deep down and want to be your friend. Janet said she wanted her own life. She wanted her own voice. She wanted to make her own direction, but she couldn't because of her father. So we then see a shift, all right? Janet wanted her own identity, And the only way she could get there was by firing her manager, her father. And that's what she did. She fired Joe Jackson and did things her own way. And damn, it freaking paid off. So this is when we start seeing like Janet become the global icon that she is. So this is when we start to see the relationship with Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam, Janet's current producers. They wanted Janet to make a record the way she wanted it to be made. So in 1985, Janet began recording the Control album. Janet wanted the best lighting. She wanted the best stylists. She wanted the best choreographers. And this brings in Paula Abdul. So Paula Abdul was Janet's first choreographer. Paula broke Janet out of her shell and made her into this confident woman we all know and love today. The Control album was essentially Janet coming into her adulthood. Janet was taking control of her life and she was finding her voice. And honestly, the Control album is how I became a lifelong Janet fan. That and Design of a Decade. Janet has inspired so many people with this album. Like, Janet is a living legend. Like, control. I'm in control. Never gonna stop. Like, that album brought us Nasty, What Have You Done For Me Lately, The Pleasure Principle, The Pleasure Principle, When I Think of You, Let's Wait a While. Like, this album was freaking iconic, people. So, after the release of Control, it sold 2 million albums and went double freaking platinum. Firing Joe Jackson paid off for Janet Jackson in like a huge freaking way. So this moment in time also started the relationship with Janet's second husband, Renee. So Renee was in the film industry and worked on many projects that Janet was involved with. So this sort of then, we see Janet go into this new relationship. So Renee went on to document the next decade of Janet's life. So this footage that is shown in this documentary was never seen until the release of this documentary. So Renee might have been a flippin' a-hole, but this footage, we get to see stuff that we have never seen before. Like, life moments in Janet's life that we just never got to see. Like, I was floored to see these clips and these videos of Janet Jackson younger. Like, it showed deep, private conversations, deep, private moments in the life of Janet Jackson. And then just like that, Janet got married to Renee, again, in secret. She told no one about the marriage. So the two, she said, they got engaged in Hawaii on a beach. Now, I want to I need to pull up my receipts here. This marriage and the downfall of this marriage is how we got the Velvet Rope album. And I'm gonna talk about the Velvet Rope album in a lot more detail in part 2 of this video, but I just want to talk about this one quick thing about the engagement in Hawaii on the beach. This is how we got What About. So Janet and Renee got engaged in Hawaii on a beach, and y'all, let's talk about What About. So without Renee, we wouldn't have gotten the Velvet Rope album, okay? We just wouldn't. The lyrics of What About: we walked along the beach, what a moonlit night. He held my hand in his, he kissed me, he said, I want to spend my life with you. I want you for my wife. Just then I thought, what about the times you lied to me? What about the times you said no one would want me? What about all the shit you've done to me? What about that? What about that? What about the times you yelled at me? What about the times I cried? You wouldn't even hold me. What about those things? What about that? What about that? That song is about that moment in Hawaii when he proposed to her. That's a deep song. So I will say this about this documentary. It shows so many behind-the-scenes footage of Janet's life that no one ever got to see. Like, very intimate moments. And because Janet is such a private person, the fact that we're seeing this old footage gives us a better understanding of who Janet is and what really she had to deal with. So we then move over into Janet never being able to escape Michael's shadow. So in 1987, Janet went to Europe to promote the Control album, and during the promo tour, all of the reporters kept asking her about Michael. Over and over and over again, she was continued to be asked about Michael, what Michael was doing, what projects Michael was working on. Everything was about Michael. Even after all of the success that Control had, it was always about Michael Jackson. Janet said that there's a great deal of scrutiny that comes by having the Jackson last name, which, where is the lie, people? Where's the lie? There is none. So then we're going to move on, and we're going into 1988, and Janet is recording the follow-up album to Control, which we all know now is Rhythm Nation. But when Janet began this follow-up album to Control, there was no Rhythm Nation. That idea didn't even exist. And that, to me, I guess that's how the creative process works, but I just found it so mind-blowing because I guess in my mind I thought, like, okay, you're going into the recording studio and you have this idea of what you want to do, and to find out there was no idea, there was no Rhythm Nation, there was no nothing, and it just kind of, as you went on and made it, it became Rhythm Nation. The whole thing was mind-blowing. So there was also a great deal of pressure on Janet while recording this second album because of the massive success Control had. Like, she didn't want this to be, a flop, which, I mean, can you blame her? There was this scene with Janet recording with Terry and Jimmy and them getting into this massive argument because Janet wasn't giving enough energy while singing. The back and forth between Terry and Jimmy and Janet got so bad, she got so frustrated and ended up storming out of the recording studio. And all while this was happening, Renee was filming the entire interaction. Terry and Jimmy wanted him to stop filming, but Renee didn't, and he kept going and captured that very raw emotion, that scene, and I'm just like, oh my God. Like, these moments, like, we never got to see until now. So there was also this moment hearing the original version of Rhythm Nation, which is so surreal to me because it sounded nothing like the version we know today. Like, it was almost like a completely different song, and I'm like, ugh, I'm glad they reworked that because the version that they played in this documentary, I'm like, oh God, thank God it is what it is today. So anyway, Rhythm Nation, it was released in 1989. Janet, she wrote all of the lyrics, all of the medleys for this album. She had full creative control of the album, and the album essentially broke boundaries. It talked about race issues, education, prejudice, global problems. It was an epic freaking album. It was a socially conscious album. Essentially the first of its kind. Like, Janet was a trailblazer. Like, she wasn't afraid to talk about social injustices. She wasn't afraid to break boundaries, and that's what this album did. So we end the premiere night with the Rhythm Nation tour. So this is Janet's freshman tour. She's finally going out, performing. Like, she's released 2 albums and no one ever got to see her perform on a tour. So this is a big deal. So during rehearsals for the Rhythm Nation tour, one of the stylists did a confessional and said that he met Janet while she was with Renee, and that Renee had so much power off Janet's back that no one wanted to cross Renee, which made me go, huh. And part 2, when we do that video, we're going to talk about Renee, because I have a lot of thoughts about that. But to not make this video like 2 hours long, subscribe to my channel. We're going to talk about it in part 2. I promise you we will. We're going to talk about Renee. But that line, with the stylist, what he said, I'm like, oh, Renee just seems to be wanting to ride off of Janet's coattails. Just saying, he does. He had so much control of her life and her career, and she trusted him to have that control. And there was a quote that Renee said in this documentary towards the end. He said, "I'm an extension of Janet." Part 2, y'all. You don't want to miss it. We're going to talk about it. So Janet then, at the end of this documentary, shares this dream she had of the opening night of her tour. She went out on stage, finished the opening act, and heard 3 people applauding. Essentially, no one showed up to the show. But the next day, Janet said that she saw this long line of cars down the road. She could only see headlights, and she was wondering where all those people were going. And they were all going to see her tour. It sold out. Her tour sold out. Rhythm Nation ended up selling 12 million albums, multiple #1 hits. It awarded her her first Grammy, and she was the first woman nominated for Producer of the Year award. Rhythm Nation gave us the self-titled song Rhythm Nation, State of the World, Miss You Much, Love Will Never Do, All Right, Escapade, Come Back to Me, Black Cat. Like, that album, y'all, broke boundaries. And Rhythm Nation, the tour, was the biggest debut tour in history. And that is a record that Janet still holds today. No one has come close to beating that record. So like I said, this is going to be a 2-part video. Guys, this freaking documentary, if you are any type of Janet fan, you need to, don't walk to Lifetime. Don't walk to A&E. Run and go and watch it right now. It is so freaking good. Like, I've watched it 3 times already and it just came out 2 days ago. I'm a crazy person. So in part 2 of this video, next time we're gonna talk about the allegations surrounding Michael Jackson and how it affected Janet. We're gonna talk about her relationship with Renee. We're gonna talk about the Super Bowl incident, and we're gonna talk about what is next for Janet Jackson. So you don't wanna miss it. Part 2 is coming out really soon. Get subscribed to my channel and comment below. Let me know what you all thought of this Janet Jackson documentary that aired on Lifetime and A&E. Comment below, subscribe to my channel, share this video with all of your Janet Jackson fans, and I'll catch you guys in part 2. It's coming. I'll talk to you later. Bye.